Hello, you're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. Because it's more fun to believe. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to a new episode, another episode of Me and Paranormal You. This is Ryan Singer, your host, and I am happy to be joined once again by my buddy, Greg Feinman. Greg, how you doing today?
Always doing good. Always doing good.
Cool. It's always nice to chat with you on the microphones. We have conversations just on the regular old cellular telephone every so often as well, where we catch up on things. And we were talking the other night, and I was like, you know what, this could be an interesting episode if we kind of tried to isolate something from your experiences. And if people, just as a refresher, people can get caught up on the nature of this conversation and this story and this investigation that is still ongoing. There's multiple episodes where Greg has been on the program. I highly recommend checking those out. And you'll just kind of be up to speed on everything, because I don't think we want to rehash everything, because you've been on the show now enough times where I don't think we need to go
Yeah.
over that stuff. So but I'm excited to kind of go over some of these things, because it ties into another fascination of mine, which is kind of, with like, in the dream world and in the dream state, some of these things that these themes that occur, as far as kind of being, I don't know, maybe a good way to say it is gifted knowledge that wasn't had previously to someone who wasn't even seeking out this specific information. And there are historical examples of people who were seeking out information, but then it was a really big breakthrough was given to them in the dream world, like whether it was Neil Bohr's, when he was, he's a really famous scientist. Nikola Tesla was famous for, saying that the inspiration came from dreams. Paul McCartney, the song Yesterday, which is a very famous example. He said he woke up from that dream and had the melody, had that song, in his head. It was just laid out for him in a dream. He woke up, so he wrote it down. I think Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, that story by, is that Mary Shelley, or Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, I think also maybe,
Yeah.
but these are, if I'm not mistaken, these are stories that have just been like, boom, like information that was just kind of downloaded or given to in a dream, and people just
Well,
ran with it. So,
and
what's
if
that?
real quick, if you read the Bible, how do you think prophets got their information? How do you think um, Joseph knew to flee Bethlehem to save Jesus? It came in a dream.
Oh, I didn't. I'm admittedly, I'm quite rusty on my on my Bible stories, but yeah, I mean, it's a big theme throughout history, and I guess even science, religion, and everything. It pervades, or it is present. That
Yes.
no matter what people are, no matter what their pursuits are, whether it's music, science, religion, profit, these things, it's really interesting, because there's also a lot of occurrences of information just kind of showing up. And you hear psychics talk about this as well, or you'll hear, mediums, or, people who are channeling, not necessarily channeling, but it's almost, it's kind of in the neighborhood in the way it's kind of described by someone who is receiving information. There are some similarities. We don't need to get into that right now, but for me, it is pretty fascinating that there's all of this kind of similarity between all of these things that are all very interesting topics. And so today, what we want to kind of focus on are the moments where you were just kind of aware of information or ideas, right, about certain things, whether they're scientific or otherwise, that you've never really, that you didn't spend time like researching or going to school for, and things like that. So do you remember the first time that you just kind of had a nugget of something in your brain, And specifically for people listening, we're talking about FITs, friends in the sky, ETs, potentially kind of delivering this message or providing this information, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. It sometimes it's the timing of the thought, that comes in. Um, I can't really uh, explain other than the fact that it's a knowing, it's just a knowing. Um, when I was talking to a buddy of mine, and by the way, Dan says hi.
Oh, friend of the show, Dan
Yeah,
Lindholm, our
yeah,
buddy.
yeah. Big truth. Yeah, and I was talking to him and one day, and I was explaining to him that Fitz told me that time happens simultaneously, like past, present, future. It's like a simultaneous thing. And now I just said it because that's what they told me, and it's hard to even wrap your head around. But like a week later, he was hearing somebody who was educated talking about that exact thing and how he was able to describe what I was talking about. And at that moment, Dan said, "Well, hey, Greg was telling me this, and I know where he went to school. I grew up with him. He ain't this smart.
He's not an astrophysicist.
Yeah, he's not this smart. Um, the they've and it's when they tell me things. Sometimes it's like a reward for doing something. Not like I'm doing tricks for them, but um, it all kind of came all through in the same incident. But there was somebody that basically I just forgave that uh, something happened several months prior, and we just hadn't talked since that one incident, and in my heart I was good with him and everything, but I didn't really tell him, so one day I made it a point to go talk to him. And as we were talking, after 8 months of not, talking at all, as we started talking and everything, I just walked up, interrupted him, and hugged him and said, "Man, I'm sorry. Whatever happened, whatever I did that made you angry, I'm sorry, man." And that was it. And it's the best heartfelt way I can show someone that I forgive them or that I'm good with it, even though they maybe don't feel they need to be forgiven. But I'm just trying to get right with it, and with him, because it's more about friendship and forgiveness than anything else about your ego. So that being said, I did that. And that night, I'm at my computer and something calls me outside. Like I'm just called outside. So I started walking outside and I started recording before I even walked out the door. And I started talking to the camera and basically asking Fitz if they're there. And, they've been showing themselves to others if they would show themselves. And as soon as I said that, a light appeared in the sky. Now, it's not a huge light. It's not like a picture of what you saw on Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the big old ship or anything like that. No, man, it was a little light, but it's in the middle of nowhere in the sky, and it wasn't meant for anyone else. It was meant for me. All right, so they showed themselves in that way to me. A light appeared, and then you can see little blinking lights around it if you look around close. And that being said, like an hour later, they started giving me information as well. Some of the information they've given me, and I think I talked to you about one that to access your memory is a very rudimentary form of time travel.
Yeah, this is really interesting because I don't think we talked about this when we were chatting about this on the phone because um I thought it would I knew it was going to come up here. or maybe we did. I don't remember. But
I
a,
don't,
a
yeah, but
friend of mine who has a podcast, my buddy Brent Terhune, he's a very funny comedian. He reached out to me and he's like, "Hey, I want to have you on my podcast to talk about time travel." So I recently, I think maybe a week and a half ago, I was on his podcast just to talk about time travel. And I was kind of just thinking off the top of my head, and I was like, well, there's different kinds of ways you can time travel. And I was thinking like, memory, going through your memory or visualizing the future is I guess as you're calling it like a rudimentary form of time travel, because I think most people think of using some device and like blinking into a different time zone, like Back to the Future, right? When in fact, potentially there could be, like you say, this rudimentary form of time travel, right?
and when I know that it's not really coming from me is when I use a word like rudimentary. That's I yeah I'm not saying I'm a caveman by any means, but uh there's just certain things that I don't really use all the
Certain words
time.
that don't
Yeah,
find their way into your normal vocabulary on a
exactly.
day-to-day basis.
And it was real important that rudimentary was there. Um, um, and they were also saying to time travel is to access the Earth's recordings. Like the Earth records everything that happens. Um, and I guess if you think about it, residual hauntings maybe uh, is because of that. Maybe something with emotion or whatever imprints itself deeper than anything else, and that particular emotion, that whatever that was imprinted, that leaks through where we can see it in the form of a haunting, in the form of a residual haunting. That it's a recording is all it is of a haunting happening. And if that's the case, maybe that's all the time. Maybe it's just that certain events embed themselves deeper because of emotion or anger or, well, anger, hate, discontent, whatever it is. And because of that, it seems to bleed through our dimension. We see it as a haunting. I don't know. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, these are the
Well,
things
that's
that come to my
interesting.
thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to think about that because while you were describing that, a visual image pops in my mind of, how you can go to the doctor and they can put electrodes or whatever on a person's head, and they can try to measure which parts of the brain are lighting up when certain memories or recall is being used. And I was like, what if, no, this is just something I'm saying for the first time ever, but like what if the earth is like the brain center of the universe too when it comes to the memory, right? And we just happen to be here, like on the brain of the universe, like the physical manifestation of the brain anyway, of the universe, which seems like a pretty crazy idea, but there is, I think, something to be said for the emotion aspect of what you're talking about. Because whether it's extreme love, I know when I'm doing paranormal investigations, like this past weekend, my buddy Karen Rontowski talks about this all the time. Like, let's try to access the emotion. Let's try to ask questions that get to emotion here with something that we might be communicating with, because that's more likely to get a response, or we're more likely to find something if we key in on those, highly emotion packed moments of a person's life.
And yeah, and again, all that depends on where you're at. Um, some places are more apt to record than others, like stone buildings. Uh, Certain type of stone is more apt to embed or record. And I'm not sure exactly what stone, but it's um,
Is it an energetic thing? What?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like, I'm trying to remember some of the stones that that
Like
the temples were
limestone?
limestone. There you go. Thank you. There's certain stone that picks up and actually embeds whatever happens around it. And I don't know what it is, to be honest with you. I know I've heard it, and I've read it. And I just can't access it right now in my brain right now. But yeah, um,
Well, it's not the craziest idea because I'm gonna have to look into this and try to find some of this information because that's pretty fascinating. And I do know that there, whether it's people who do work with crystals or other, gemstones and things like that, they're, the energetic, the frequency and the vibration of different materials and different minerals and stones, etc., have different, frequencies. They serve different purposes, and they have different attributes. So it makes sense that one of them could be kind of like the absorber of information. And you hear about this with Lemurian quartz, where supposedly the Lemurians out in Mount Shasta area had put the history of their people embedded into Lemurian quartz crystal. And people who can read those crystals can get information. So you can, like, it's almost like you're talking to a psychic or like a mystical librarian record keeper, right? When people can talk to that stone
wow.
allegedly and retrieve information from there. And
Mm,
then there's also the Akashic records, which are more of an ethereal storage location of everything that's ever happened in the universe and potentially and everything that will. But that is cool though to think about, the different building materials having like an amplifying or even subduing effect on, whether it's imprints and loops or of the memory of the universe's, the earth's memory of something that was happening there, whether
yeah.
large
And
scale or individual.
yeah, and those are subject, a lot of these like buildings that are built out of stone, that kind of stuff are subject to quote hauntings when really, that's what they call them. But if you want to look at it, it's just basically something, I think, bleeding over. If it's a residual, anyway, I'm not talking about intelligent hauntings at all. I'm talking about just a residual haunting where it's just a recording of something happening over and over and over. I mean, what else can you think other than it's a recording that's happening and somehow it's been recorded somehow?
Yeah. And I'm curious, during the course of your investigations, because you've been into cemeteries. I mean, you've been all over the place investigating stuff, all different types of phenomena. It's not just unusual bovine death or F.I.T.S or Oma or Sasquatch. When you are encountering an intelligence, or let's just say before we even get to the intelligence part, if someone is listening and they're like, I would like to try to know how to differentiate between interacting with a loop or a residual, like a memory, right, and an intelligent haunting. Is there keystones or are there clues that you've come across along the way that kind of really alert you right away? Like, oh, this isn't a residual thing. This is something we're having an active conversation.
Well, um, really, it has to do with the timing of everything. You know, everything is about timing, timing of when something happens. Um, uh, it's really hard, to really pinpoint, but there's times that I can watch something on TV and go, oh, that's just a residual haunting, is what that is, because there's no intelligence behind it. You can't interact with it at all. Period. It doesn't even. It will not. Um, uh, it won't show that you're there whatsoever. It just seems like it's just doing its own thing over, but it's the same thing over and over, over and over. An intelligent haunting, you get responses. You get responses back either by touching my EMF meter or talking back to me with the portal device or my SB7 spirit box or whatever. When you're getting anything back that way, that's all intelligent. So, when anything that you can respond to and interact with, definitely not residual. Residual is just like a recording of like, some cassette player that just plays one song over and over and over and over and over back in the 80s.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of the difference between watching a football game on TV and actually being in the game. Like you have no control. Like when you're just watching something on television, like a football game or something, you have no control. I mean, you can see it, but it's going. Everything that's going to happen in there is going to happen without any input from you whatsoever. But you can
Yeah.
observe. But you can observe it. Um, Now it's a lot different though when you're on the field and you can actually partake in the game and things change because of what you're doing. Um, that is really cool to think about because I think people who are listening to this who go on investigations and have experience with all this, their memory is probably being jostled. I mean, we're talking about memory too, so it's kind of kind of a meta thing, I guess. But going back and thinking about like, oh yeah, no wonder I remember when this kept happening and we just couldn't get it to do something different or get a different response or get an answer. And it was a little bit frustrating. But and then in hindsight, it's probably like, oh, that was because it was probably this residual thing that we can identify, but we can't get any kind of intelligent response other than what it's already doing.
Yeah. And that a lot of that would probably be a better answer for Mama Sue. But I definitely ain't her. Um, they since the beginning of this investigation, they've let me know, and we've talked about what they've taken me, and they've done something to me that allows me to talk to them, and it allows me to talk to Oma as well. And they tell me things here and there. Oma does, just like Fitz does. But that's the best. That's as good as I can do. You know, Mama Sue is one of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life. I don't even hold a candle to her. I'm like, so new at this. What I'm learning, and I don't claim to be. I'm an investigator. Not a professor. So I don't. These are my experiences. The best way I can explain them, and how I can explain them. And sometimes um, Fitz tells me how to explain things. Sometimes at the moment, like when
Well,
I've
before you
explained,
get into this example, real quick, this is where I'm going to pause real quick for the sponsors to jump in and have their commercials. So when we come back, we're going to talk about Fitz, telling you how to explain things. We're talking about getting information from an outside source from ourselves that we, under normal circumstances, would not know or have access to. So, and just as a reminder, if you're listening to the podcast right now and you want to listen without ads, you can go to patreon.com/Ryan Singer for $3 a month. You can get all of the upcoming episodes ad free, so you don't have to worry about capitalism interrupting the conversation. So again, that's patreon.com/Ryan Singer, and we'll be right back. Okay, and we are back. So we've got Greg Feinman. Greg, we're talking about the information that kind of can be given to us, or specifically the information you've received from Fitz, Friends in the Sky. And you were getting ready to give an example of when they tell you how to describe something, correct?
yeah, okay, just how they're able to see what they're telling us. That they've told us what's going to happen, and they said that I was trying to explain it. I said it's like if you're in a forest and you don't know which way north, south, east, or west is, you don't know which way to go to get out of there. But if you elevate yourself above the tree line, you can have a better angle and see the best way to get out of there. Now you tell the guy at the bottom, go east. Now the guy at the bottom doesn't think the guy at the top is some prophet or something, that he knows all this because he knows all this. He didn't get some special ability. He just went higher and he's at an angle where he can see it. Okay, but to tell us when it's going to happen, they told me to explain it like this. We can't, because it's like taking and I just used any band like Pink Floyd, The Wall, side 2, all right, on an LP record, and try to put the needle on a specific word of a specific song. And that's the same in the same way they can't pinpoint a time exactly when it's going to happen, but they can see that it's going to happen. Does that make sense? The best way
Yeah. Yeah, that is okay. Yeah, it's actually making me visualize, like, you're able to look at the lyrics of a song on a, like, on the sheet, or like on the, let's say, on the LP cover, how they, on some of them on the inside or the back will have the lyrics for each song, but that doesn't mean you're going to be able to drop the needle right where that word is, even though you can see that word, or that word's coming up.
Well, yeah, it's just like it's just the vinyl record. How hard it would be to do that would be, yeah, I don't know. I've never tried it, but it'd be pretty darn hard to put it right on that word, you know. And in the same way, that's how they can't pinpoint a time. And that's the best I can do to explain it, because that's how they've explained it to me. And sometimes it just leads to more questions, but you know,
Man, you've got now. I've got this really wild idea. Um, Now, granted, it would require carrying a bunch of equipment and stuff, but going on an investigation, bringing a record player, and finding a blank LP, right? So it just kind of has static. And you know how many of us will use these devices that have static or other, like, nonsensical words or sounds in them, and we're like, well, the phenomena, or whoever the entities, they can manipulate that to make words that we do understand. And if that were the case, I'm curious if you could even buy a blank record that you could play, so it's just got that static sound, you know what I mean, of
yeah,
a and I think that would be interesting, because if you can get words or communication through that, so it's like a very old school way to try to do a new school
that's
kind of
almost
thing.
like the Scole Experiments,
Are we talking
where
about the crystal skulls?
no, it's called the Scole, Skoll.
Okay, tell me about
It
this. I'm not familiar with the
it
Scole experiments.
they did a whole bunch of experiments back in the day, and oh man,
Is it
trying to remember.
named after, like, an area, or
I think so. It's in England. They hold on a second, man.
oh, the afterlife investigations, the Scole experiment.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's um okay, I'm looking it
trying to,
up real quick here,
and I
just so
just
we can.
lost what you were talking about. What brought me to that Scole
Oh, the
experiment?
the blank record. We were thinking about a blank
Okay,
record,
because
trying to, yeah.
they took in a blank film, 30, I think 35 millimeter film, into this you want to call it a seance, or this where they were uh, talking to the other side. And during one of their experiments, they brought in a blank 35 millimeter film and set it on the table. And when they had someone check to make sure the film was good, it wasn't like some trick film or anything like that. Um, they took the film back out after the session, and what they found on there was like photos of people, like just a picture of a face. One of them, they found it was some sort of a device to help them better talk to them, but it was some device that came from the other side, and the signatures, they matched up to Thomas Edison, because it gave a little signature at the end, like he gave his signature at the end of it, I guess, and they matched it up to Thomas Edison's signature. And evidently he did some things with the, he was interested in life after death back in the day as well, I guess. But that happened, and they did it a couple times where they would bring in this blank film and come out with, photos.
This is interesting. I'm looking at the website, and it looks like we're coming up on the 30-year anniversary of the Scole Experiments when they first started. And I haven't seen this documentary. I'm going to have to watch it tonight if it's out. And then apparently
it's fantastic.
There's also a film, and it looks like there's going to be a ton of files and things released to commemorate the 30th anniversary in 2023, because it started in 1993. It looks like it went for 5 years until 1998. And it says the Scole files that when in 2023, 90% of the Scole files that have not yet been released will be published online with universal free access for study and discussion for educational purposes only. The Scole files now being released will include all available audio recordings of the 500 2-hour sessions of the Scole Experiment. So you can go to thescoleexperiment.com, and again, that's SCOLE for Scole. So it's like coal, but with an S on front of it, or the name coal, not like the material. So it was a 5-year investigation seeking evidence for consciousness in the afterlife and hyperlife, is a word they're using. Looks like Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove has said the Scole Experiment possibly constituting the greatest variety and intensity of unbelievable psychical phenomena in the history of parapsychology and psychical research. And I've had Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove on this program before. He's amazing and wonderful. Many people know him as the host of that TV show that was on public access. It's called, I think, New Thinking Aloud, in which he currently still runs on his YouTube channel. But he just won $500,000 first prize in the Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies.
Wow.
And their essay contest, which wow, that's $500,000. But Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove has dedicated his life to parapsychology, and The PK Man is an excellent book for those who haven't read it. Anyway,
great. It's fantastic. I don't want to ruin it for anyone.
No spoilers.
No.
But this looks really fascinating. I can't believe I'm not familiar with this. So I'm gonna have to dig into this tonight. Looks like there's all kinds of books about it. I just can't be buying a bunch of books right now. But I've got. I'm
yeah, who can? Yeah,
I'm already behind on my reading list. My mom has got me. She's doing the Wim Hof method. The guy who developed the breathing techniques. And anyway, that's a whole nother thing. So we're talking about, trying to manipulate or how psychic phenomena or paranormal phenomena can manipulate sounds, film, things like this. But getting back to what we're talking about, it seems like this ties into, if in fact there is this memory there, right?
Well, and I almost forgot. I think I told you this too. We were talking about something. I don't know what it was, but they kind of said it to me like this. Don't you get it, Greg? Because I think I was asking them like how I'm able to talk to them, telepathically. Are they in this dimension when I'm talking to them? They're like, Greg, don't you get it? You haven't got it yet? Your thoughts are interdimensional. Thoughts are interdimensional.
Okay, so this is another one of those nuggets that was dropped into you, given to you.
Yeah, and I was like, again, it makes you wonder. There are people that say that spirits can interfere with their dreams, and they've, people have said that, and maybe that's a way, maybe that's how. I don't know. I don't know, but
Yeah.
that's it's again, it's something above my intelligence level, but I can't. It's not something that you can refute either, and I don't know what to say about it. It's
Well, I've long mused on here that I think that maybe the only thing faster than the speed of light is the speed of sound. There is now this is really kind of blasting my brain open and making me wonder if we're talking about they're talking about afterlife, and then that phrase hyperlife really just kind of resonated with me. I'm from the website the Experiments.com, but I'm thinking, like, what if the dream, how we have this physical state and it's like the 3D world, it's like this dimension, like the physical dimension around us. It's making me wonder, because of what you just mentioned about the dreamscape, if that's just another like dimension that's like always here, like you said, like time just layered on top of each other. It's all kind of intermeshed. And if we won't in some point in the future understand that the dream dimension essentially is just a different dimension, a different physical dimension for our consciousness to operate within, while the physical body needs its rest,
okay.
right?
So I can tell you that um, for the last, oh, I don't know, man, it's several months. I've been, I wake up and I see something that day that I saw in my dreams. And it's not a whole event as much as it is just a picture, like just a picture or a location of somewhere, you know, and you see that one, and it's like, oh my gosh, I saw that in my dream. And one day, me and Mama Sue were watching TV, and I would say that to her, oh, I saw that in my dream. But this time I went, ooh, I saw this in my dream. And there was a woman, and she was talking about being touched, and she had her finger out, extended out in the touching motion, saying something about being touched. And no sooner I get done saying that, it cuts to a lady talking about how a spirit can touch you. And it was like and it had she was doing the same motion that I was doing just seconds before. And there's no way I could have timed it like that if I tried.
Hmm.
If I never saw that show ever, And Sue goes, I've never even done that. That's crazy. That's crazy. I'm glad someone was there to see it.
Yeah, you're
You know,
well, are you familiar with how people, or I don't know where I heard this, but when you try to swat a fly, and it's always like just a split second ahead of you.
yeah.
I can't remember where I heard this, but someone says it's because they experience time slightly different than us, like faster than us, meaning, or slower than us. So they can see, they sense you swatting at them before you even realize you're swatting at them, if that makes sense. And you can kind of understand, like, if you've ever seen movies where someone has like slow-mo power, and so they can easily move out of the way of things
Oh,
that are happening very fast.
that's all we need is psychic flies, man. I'll never be able to swat the things, man.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you have to go see the Oracle, and it's like, who? And
Yeah,
it's like, come over here. It's they're hanging out
yeah,
over by the pile of shit.
yeah, that's it, man. I'm getting that fly assault gun, man. That's it.
Yeah, you can never. Yeah, it's either that or the other way is like, oh, I can
Yeah.
never swat another
Oh,
fly again.
no, I won't be able to. Yeah, it'll know it's being. Yeah, that would be horrible.
Yeah, what's funny too is, like, you're not necessarily, like, when it comes to a lot of these nuggets that get dropped in, that we're talking about, and um, it's not something that you're necessarily like being. It's not like you're looking up to the stars and being like, give me information,
Yeah.
like we said, it's nothing that happens. And you mentioned a reward aspect earlier as well, so sometimes it'll kind of come in from a thing like that. But it's also interesting because there seems to be a conversational aspect to some of it, from what you're describing.
Oh,
um Meaning, like when they're like, don't you get it, Greg? um and then they drop a nugget on you you
yeah.
know
Well, okay. Um, there's things again that um, I guess I'm not supposed to know right now. Sue, Mama Sue, told us way back um, that I've been on that ship, both of us, and we've had conversations with them like over coffee, like not over coffee, but in that
in that context, like
context.
hanging out, having a
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah, and that they even shook your hand, which they don't do, and they're educating me, and I'll know it when the time comes. Like they're educating me, and then there's going to come a time that it'll all come to me, I guess. They can, if they don't want you to remember something, you ain't remembering it. And I don't think even if, I mean, I'm sure someone's going to ask, well, why don't you go into hypnosis or whatever? I don't know. I don't want to do that. I don't want to hamper anything they're trying to do. I'm not trying to prove it to nobody. I mean, they can believe it or not, but I'm not going to interfere with anything they're doing because, they're doing it for a reason and they're doing it for my own good. They've been, they've tested my character all my life. They've tested, I mean, been with me for a long, long time, and they've been behind the scenes for a long, 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 long time. And I know they're doing it for our own good. They haven't shown me anything. Okay, when you don't know somebody very well and you you start living with them or something, and you find out they're a different person, all their true colors start coming out, you know. Um, well, their true colors have come out, and all it's been about is love, compassion, kindness, forgiveness. You know, me and Sue had a little argument on the way out one night. They wouldn't even talk to us.
Because it was the wrong energy happening
Yeah, it wouldn't
for
even talk to us. And um, we weren't arguing back then, but they told us you shouldn't argue. It's so primitive. I'm like, oh, well, we're done for tonight.
it really is. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, I think all of us understand that our bodies feel different physically when we are in one of those states, when we're agitated, when we're arguing, when we're angry. And it's a different
Yeah.
energy, it's a different vibration. We're emanating a different vibe for sure
And,
when that
and
happens. And
yeah, and what I'm trying to say is if anything was evil about any of this, they wouldn't care about that. I mean, we would have known somewhere down the line in 2 years, we would have known somewhere where something bad, like they were against us for whatever reason. I had a lady, I was in Safeway, and this lady comes up to me, saw me on the show on that last show I did, UFO Witness, and she's like, "Oh, so um, are the Grays going to take us over?" Just ready. Like, are they going to take us over? I'm like, um, I don't know, what exactly you think or whatever, but if Fitz wanted to take us over, they could do it in a split second, and we'd be taken over. All right. We're going to harm ourselves. We don't have to worry about anything else harming us. Humanity's going to take care of itself, but don't worry about them. I said, they're here to help us. Now, you got to sometimes preface that because there are other alien races that do not have our best interests in mind, and they will make themselves known at a certain time. When, I don't know, but that's what they say, and there's uh but Fitz, they're very much for us, for humanity, very much. And the cattle mutilations are just a example of what they're trying to do for us, trying to help us, you know, and people can believe this or not, listen, you know, time will tell on what happens. And, if you, the message really is be a good person. That's the message, man. When it all gets all down to it, man, be a good person and help one another. If you are headed out the grocery store with your stuff and you see someone struggling with their groceries, stop and help that person. You see someone stumble somewhere, help them back up. Don't curse them, help them back up. All right. We got to help one another, man, because we're all in this together. All of us are in this together.
Yeah, for
More
sure.
so than we think.
Yeah, there's it's one for all and all for one. I mean, and I think more and more people realize that when truly confronted with things. And what I mean by that is, I think a really good example is, I don't know anyone who is super angry about a really bad traffic jam on the highway, right? And just like pissed off. And then when they get to the scene of whatever the thing was that was happening, it was a really bad accident. And let's say there's a stretcher there with a person on it. I don't know anyone who in that moment still feels the anger of being slightly inconvenienced. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the truth of the moment, of the realness, or the severity of the actual life and that we're living, and our connectedness to a total stranger who now we see who's in peril or injured, that trumps everything else. It overcomes us. And we are no longer thinking to ourselves, well, I'm going to be 10 minutes late to my blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? Like, none of that means anything anymore because
And
because
it,
we're
it
because we're people.
and again, it depends on the situation, why he's being held up. You know, uh, certain things that we may think of as an emergency, like a flat tire or something, may not be such an emergency to him. Like that's what I mean. Everyone had to slow down because the guy on the side of the road. I mean, but you're absolutely right, man. When people see something that's happening that makes their situation a lot better, like me being late to work is nothing compared to what that person's going through, you
Exactly.
know, then you don't feel so bad. You do feel bad. You're like, oh, you kind of take that back. Not now. I
Mm-hmm.
can't speak for everybody, but most people are that way.
Yeah.
Most people are, for the most part, good. You
For the
know,
most part, I agree with that 100%. And some people are just, they're like also bestowed with an amount of grace that is like overwhelming to me. A buddy of mine who's a comedian, Alex Hooper, who's also been on this show not that long ago, he was very recently diagnosed with cancer, and he started chemotherapy very recently. So if any listeners are out there, send that good vibe energy to our buddy Alex. But he
what's his
every
last
day,
name?
Hooper,
Hooper.
as
Okay.
in like hula hoop, Alex Hooper. A lot of people recognize him from America's Got Talent, and that TV show that he was on a few years back. But um, he every day he's posting something he calls his daily lollipop, and he was doing it before the chemotherapy and the cancer diagnosis, and he's been doing it since. And I remember one day, just a few weeks back, I was like having a rough day, and I was just like, oh man. And then right when I needed to see it, I saw a video of him in a park on a what's it called? a high, like those high wires, like a string, or like people in the circus. Well, he can do that. He can kind of like stand on strings. So he'll tie like strings to trees in a park and kind of walk the string. It's really, really
A
funny.
string, really.
Yeah, and like a high wire string, right? And
It's crazy.
he'll talk, and he'll film himself talking about like some kind of like thought he had as like an inspirational thing for the day, while he's like wobbling on this high wire string. And it's entertaining, it's uplifting, and it's just great. And then you realize like, oh yeah, like this is a person who's going through a lot more than I am currently. um and they are going for it. You know what I mean? They are staying positive, and that doesn't mean that they don't need encouragement as well, because most certainly they do. But it is one of those things. It's a matter of perspective.
That's a gift for what he's able to do. You
Really,
know
I mean,
that
yeah, I mean, it really
and
is. I mean, I don't mean really like. Do you think so? I mean, like really, really, it is.
yeah,
Um, well, here's a
and
question, or what's that?
I was just gonna say, and for him, to be the uplifter, you know, says a lot about Mr. Mr. Alex Hooper, man. He to be able to do that and know what you've got, and still put people smile on people's faces, still want to make people laugh, still that's a hero. That's humanity. That's um,
It's a
yeah,
clear choice. It's a clear choice that's been made
exactly,
to embrace the light and not the darkness.
exactly.
And it's
That's
not
well
easy.
said. Well
It's
said.
and it's not easy to do. And I'm curious here as we wrap up this chat or this conversation, and I'm sure we're going to talk again on the show, so I'm not worried about that. But um, is there any more like was there along this? I can't believe it's been 2 years. Talk about the blink of an eye.
Oh,
Um, is there a nugget that's dropped in that just, I mean, not to say that all of them aren't like this, but is there one that stands out to you just like, wow, what? Like what? Why am I being given this information right now? Uh
well, I have to say that every piece of information that I get like that, see, they don't talk for no reason. When they say something, whatever it is, they mean it. They don't talk in slang. Like when they told us, we asked, how long have you been watching us? They said, longer than you can fathom. And what they mean is whatever the word fathom is, and learn that word, and it's longer than that. All right. Because that's what they mean. The word I mean, as long as you can possibly imagine, we've been watching. All right. So every little piece of information, that nugget that they give me is like, whoa. Um, but I'm trying to remember what I mean. There's been so
well, how about I tell you one that really stood out to me? And I kind of alluded to it just a second ago when I said the blink of an eye. Um, there was an interesting because we were having this conversation previously about you being taken, and the bedroom and being gone and then being back. And one of the interesting things that you told me, or one of the many interesting things that you told me they told you was the how it happens in between the seconds.
yeah. Now, okay, thanks. It's been a while. All right. Yeah, that in between the seconds was one of the first things that I got. One of the first things that I knew it was something, because I don't definitely say that. And it was the best way to describe how they're taking us. So yeah, that one, man, thanks for remembering that. Um, that definitely was one that stuck out, um, because just like the cattle mutilations, why is it that the rancher's house sits above the rest of his property or most of it, and he hasn't been able to see one thing, and he's had 16 of them? Because they happen all between the seconds. They happen like they're breaking in from their dimension, breaking into ours. And the only thing that takes them any amount of time at all is to acquire the cow, acquire the bovine. Once they acquire it with their whatever they beam that they put on it, as soon as it encompasses the cow, it's gone. The cow's gone. Everything's gone. And the next, I'm surmising the next second, you're going to see the cow either falling out of the sky or it's going to be on the ground all within a couple seconds. It's going to be that quick. And I think that's how they're happening. And they would happen quicker if it wasn't for the cows wanting to take off and running. But it takes a moment, just a slight moment for them to acquire it. And once they acquire it, they're gone.
It is interesting to think about that because I don't know how many people are sitting here whenever they are considering the process of a cattle abduction and this whole process. If they, because I know in the past I've always thought like, oh yeah, so they'll come and take a cattle, and then maybe a few hours later or whatever, that cattle shows back up, or a couple days later. But in fact, it could just be seconds, like you said.
Well, I can tell you that they've done that to me in a way. Like, I don't know if they're playing practical jokes or what, but like, I remember one day I got ready for church, and, everyone has a process of getting, you know, uh, their daily routine of, brushing your teeth and, shaving. I always shave first, and then I brush my teeth, and then I take a shower. It's the same thing every single day. It doesn't change. So I shave, I brush my teeth, I jump in the shower, I get all ready for church. I go to church. Just as I'm walking in, I go to scratch my face, and it felt like I hadn't shaved for like a day and a half, 2 days. And I was like, and it made me like, had to think about it. Did I shave? Did I forget? Kind of thing. And that's what they do. They try to make you think you forgot. Just like, has anyone ever told you you did something when you know you didn't? And then you start thinking, maybe I did, because they're so sure you did. You're like, maybe I did. Well, it's,
Yeah, I've had those moments.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
but anyways, man, I digress. It's
But it's a strange sensation to experience it when it occurs, I imagine, because it's different than the way we've experienced every other day of our lives, right? And the way our experience with time, for the most part, has never been swapped up or changed or interrupted in ways previous to this. And so trying to wrap our brain around it and feeling like, wait, what's going on? Like, the confusion to me is it's a very logical, and it's a very understandable sensation to be feeling. And it would almost seem strange if one didn't have some of that happen when experiencing these things.
yeah. And when people are looking up into the sky and they see a UFO or UAP, however you want to call it, um, a lot of times it's meant for those people that see it. It's really meant for the people that see it, even though it may look far, far away and doing its own thing. It definitely knows you're watching it. It definitely knows it's got your eyes on it.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
and so don't think that, I mean, there's always a chance that, you see something like that, then all of a sudden you experience time loss, and you can't put your finger on it. You just can't put your finger on it because it's like a reverse time loss, but it happens. And like when I think back, when I went up and scratched my face and I felt like I didn't shave and I knew I did, um, I started thinking back, and there was a blank spot in my mind. I started thinking back all the way to what I did you know, the last thing I can remember doing, and that was the last thing I remember really. And there's like there's spot missing that I like this blank. I don't know what I did that day,
Yeah.
and I can't explain it any more than that. And it's crazy. It's and I just go, they did so, I just know they took me when they did that. I don't make a big deal of it or anything like that. And I have to say that, you know, I'm not being abducted. If being taken, I'm not being abducted. Abducted is going against your will, you know. So I want to make that clear that there's no abduction. This is all, um, with my permission,
Okay.
you
That's a
know.
good distinction. Well, Greg, this has been fun. I just
All
want
right, brother.
to remind people they can go back and listen to the previous episodes. They can go to patreon.com/Ryan Singer. They can listen to the ad-free episodes. They can go to your YouTube. Tell everybody your YouTube, because the most recent video it's pretty interesting. I highly recommend people watching it. I will link it in the show notes, so you can click on it very easily from there onto the YouTube page. But tell people about the
I
YouTube page.
I think it's GOTYR6. I think that's it. I don't know much about TikTok here. Hold on a second.
Or no, I'm
I've
talking
been
about the YouTube.
Oh,
But you're
YouTube.
also
Okay.
on TikTok,
Yeah, let me see. I'm sorry. Let me think.
which
YouTube. Oh
is
yeah.
UOR.
UOR Investigations. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
sorry. I was on TikTok. I had my mind on TikTok for some reason.
Okay. Well, let
Um,
everybody know. I know because everybody's on TikTok nowadays. So let
yeah,
everybody know the TikTok as well.
yeah, my handle is got your six. Um, and it's all lowercase, GOTYR6. And then my YouTube page is UOR Investigations. And I've been starting to print a lot more on TikTok. I'm putting them both on both pages, but more on TikTok just because it gets a lot of views that way. Seems like a lot of people are on TikTok. So
Oh yeah, for sure. It's a really easy way to consume and be able to watch videos and interact as well. So yeah. So check that out, everybody. And I just want a quick reminder: I will be in Cleveland this Thursday. I'm going to put this up tomorrow, so this will go up on October 18th. So on October 20th, I'll be at Hilarities Comedy Club in Cleveland, and the 21st and 22nd, I will be in Detroit at the Independent Comedy Club. So if you're in Cleveland, come out and see a show. And if you're in Detroit, I'd love for you to come out and see a show there as well. So go get tickets on my website, ryansingercomedy.com/tour. Click on the dates, and there should be ticket links in the information there. So I'd love to see you at a live show. And I'll be in Indianapolis on November 2nd. And then I'll be doing a secret show in Mount Washington, Cincinnati on November 3rd. So come see a live stand-up comedy show. And, give Greg a follow on TikTok to watch some really cool videos, or YouTube, whatever is the best way for you to do it. Go listen to the previous episodes. Buddy, this has been great. Thanks for doing it. And we'll definitely have to do a follow-up here, obviously, in the relatively near future. We'll have you back, and we'll chat some more.
love doing it. Love doing it. Thanks for having me, Ryan. Thank you.
Yeah. Always a pleasure, my friend.